I have seen the torch of freedom pass from hand to yearning hand, and the vision of our fathers spread hope throughout this land, as the dream some fought and died for in my heart becomes my own. I will strive to keep her promise, America, my home. America, America, may God bless America, and freedom reign across America, my home. From the shorelines to the prairies, to the cities great and small, we have reaped the fruits of justice and liberty for all.
So with deep appreciation for the blessings of freedom that we know in this wonderful land of ours, I'm Dr. George Simon, welcoming you to another edition of Character Matters. This is the program where we talk about what I consider to be the defining issue of our time, the character crisis that we face, and that affects so many aspects of our lives, from our individual relationships to our marriages, to our communities, to our politics, to our business relations, to our economy, to our social interactions. Every aspect of our lives that we can think of is affected by the character crisis that we face. And that's why I've devoted the last 35 years of my career to talking about it and dealing with it in various ways, writing books and giving seminars and training mental health professionals. My books, In Sheep's Clothing, Understanding and Dealing with Manipulative People, the international bestseller on manipulation, and my book, Character Disturbance, The Phenomenon of Our Age, my in-depth study on disturbances of character and personality, and my book, The Judas Syndrome, for the Christian faith community, and also my book with Dr. Kathy Armistead, How Did We End Up Here? The Relationship Partner Survival Guide, How to Survive and Thrive in this character-disordered world of ours. And also writing many articles weekly on my blog at www.manipulative-people.com or www.drgeorgesimon.com. That's DRGEORGESIMON.com. Either URL will take you to my new and improved multi-site where everything is coming together. And so let me please explain something to you about the format of this program and how it has been formatted, and what we're trying to do. We're trying to take a new direction here in some of the topics that we talk about in the program, taking a much broader point of view. And it's really essential. It's really essential that we do this because we live in the most trying time, one of the more dangerous times. We're going to be talking about, in the program tonight, about some of the most recent events that underscore how tenuous, how fragile our world order is at this particular time, and how dangerous it is that we have such individuals as we have with truly impaired character, uh, trying to usurp power in various areas of the world. So we're going to be talking about that, and if you want to join the discussion, we have a new way to try and do that today. We've been having a lot of difficulty, as you know, technical difficulty with phone calls. And I just learned last week, as a matter of fact, that what we thought we had fixed many times over has not been fixed. And so we know that you're not able to get through uh, via the number that we have been giving out. So we're going to disregard that number, and we're going to try and patch through folks on an entirely different basis. So tonight, if you want to join the conversation, the number to call is 501 258 8326. That's 501 258 8326. Call that number if you want to join the conversation, if you want to ask a question, if you want to share a story or two that you think would benefit the audience, if you just want to have a general discussion of issues, maybe you have a situation you're dealing with that you want some personal advice about. Whatever the case may be, if you want to join the conversation, the number to call is 501 258 8326. That's 501 258. Excuse me. Oh my goodness. What a sneeze that was. I couldn't get to the mute button quick enough for that one, folks. I'm sorry about that. At any rate, that number to call once again is 501 258 8326. That's 501 258 8326. And I'll be happy to try and patch you through. I do believe that system will work. How good the technical quality will be remains to be seen, but we're going to do our best with that. So if you want to join the conversation, that's the number to call, 501 258 8326. And I'll be happy to take your call. Well, what a week this has been. And I'm going to be mentioning some things that we talked about last week as well, but some news, mainly in Syria. You know, the tragedy there only gets reported on when certain really egregious things happen. And of course, what happened this past week was President Trump decided to bomb an airfield that some intelligence had indicated was the airfield used for the Syrian army to drop chemical weapons on an area of the country that is held by the rebels, where they have a stronghold, and to punish the rebels and to punish the civilians living in the area who give tacit support to the rebels or who are not actively resisting the government rebels. Certain intelligence indicated that the Syrian army used this airfield to send planes to bomb with chemical weapons this area of the country. And the pictures of young children, infants, innocent civilians writhing in pain and gasping for breath and having all the other signs of inhaling these toxic gases was just, it brought such emotion to the fore. It's just unspeakable, the horror of witnessing that. But, you know, it underscores the fundamental problem that we face, and that is that we have only really begun in the last few decades to truly understand what makes us tick on a psychological level. And that's what I have been researching and studying and talking about for so many years. Who we are in character matters. It matters more than anything because it only takes one individual. We often say mad individual, like every such power-thirsty maniac is mentally unstable, but really it's a character issue. Were it only true that some kind of mental illness were responsible for some of the warlords and some of the activities that have caused the world so much distress, medication would take care of it. But it's not true. It's in the human heart where the problem lies, and in the character of many individuals where the problem lies. And we're only beginning to really understand what it is we have to do to instill the proper character in individuals that would make this world a livable place. And this horrendous action, whether it was by the Syrian government or not, is a big reminder, a stark reminder of what we're capable of doing to one another. There is some other intelligence. Of course, the Russian government insists that an airstrike on a munitions storage facility where rebel forces had nerve gas caused the release of this gas, that it was not a planned gas attack by the Syrian government and by President Bashar al-Assad. So who knows? Who knows what the truth is? Fact is, in our character-disturbed age, everybody lies. So it's really hard to get the truth. And what I mean, I say everybody lies. Everybody lies to some extent, but lying has become pretty much the norm, especially for people in power. There are always hidden agendas, frequently hidden agendas, and you never really know what the truth is. When you think of how many innocent American lives were lost in Vietnam, all predicated on a lie. The Gulf of Tonkin and the resolution that came from it that authorized the massive buildup of force and put us so deeply into a war. The whole thing was a ruse, and admittedly so later, but not at the time. So folks lie to us, folks charged with protecting us, leading us, they lie. And that's a character issue, a big time character issue. And it doesn't really matter what the reason is. At my training workshops, I was just in Ohio last week, did workshops in Columbus and in the Cincinnati area, and then off to Indianapolis, Indiana. And I had a wonderful reception. It was a wonderful time. I'm so glad to have done the workshops there. I've been to the Columbus area before and the Cincinnati area before and had the same wonderful reception. The same was generally true in Indianapolis, although this time the weather didn't cooperate the day before, and the turnout was not as large as we had hoped. and based on past experience had come to expect. But nonetheless, it was a good tour, and I'll be going back out on the road, not this week, but the week after Easter. I'll be going back out on the road, and this time headed to Minnesota, Duluth area, St. Cloud area, and Minneapolis area. So I'm looking forward to that. I'm also hoping that by that time the weather will be cooperating in Minnesota at this time of the year. You never really know what might be happening. So I see we have a call coming in. Oh, I was gonna try to take that call. Perhaps the caller could try once again. Not sure what happened there. Not sure what happened there. Let's try it again. Caller, if you're still out there and you're trying to call in, feel free to call in either on FaceTime, if you have my address at georgeksimon@mac.com, or call in at 501-258-8326. That's 501-258-8326, and I'll be happy to take your call. At any rate, I'm almost forgotten where I was here. Oh, yes. So we have this situation, this horrible situation in Syria. And we have two different stories about how it occurred. And they're very different stories. And regardless of that, we have to look at the action that we took and whether or not it does any good to help resolve this conflict. You know, we've been trying to resolve conflicts through the use of force for forever. And when here we go again, we have another phone call coming in. I'm going to try and take this call. Hello. Welcome to Character Matters.
Is this Dr. Simon?
It is.
Well, I know you continue on with Syria, and then I'll talk later.
Oh, thank you.
You're welcome.
Bye. Well, we have someone who's called in on the other number, and we'll just continue what we were talking about. And if she wants to call back, we'll be glad to patch her through. I hope that works. So we've been trying to solve these conflicts through the use of force. And in times past, when overwhelming force has been used for a time in utter defeat, there seems to be some motivation to make peace and to rebuild. But if you look at history closely, our problems have never been solved through the use of force. And we face the most insidious problem that we've faced in a long time in what is really heating up the world right now, because what's heating up the world right now is an ideological warfare. It's an ideological warfare that we cannot combat. We just simply cannot combat effectively with weaponry. It's not going to happen that way. It's minds and hearts that must be converted. And those minds and hearts are only going to be converted with genuine displays of care, concern, and human justice. You see, unless the social ills and injustices that people face in so many of the world's trouble spots are properly addressed, then there's always room for some maniac to propose that they have the solution to the problem and to point the finger at created enemies and to stir up public dissent. We're going to try and answer again. Hello and welcome to Character Matters.
It's Helen speaking.
Yes?
And we're having funny connections with the phone. But anyway, do you want me to begin, or there probably is a delay?
It's a delay. So if you're listening to right now on your phone or your computer or other device, that's the way to communicate with me. Don't listen to the radio or the program.
I'll turn it down right away.
Okay. So, go ahead with your question or comment, if you will.
Hello.
Hello.
Yes. Hi.
Welcome.
Welcome to. I really enjoy listening to your show. In fact, I think UCYTV is a little quiet secret of some of the best internet viewing and listening that one can listen to.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
And it evolves. You evolve. The person evolves in consciousness, and one of the first programs I listened to was yours, and it was nice for me to hear a psychologist or a doctor speaking the truth.
Well, thank you very much.
And that character did matter and does matter. It's the only thing we have. If we don't have integrity, we have nothing.
Yes, I firmly believe that's true.
Now, what is interesting is I was a teacher for 15 years, an elementary school teacher, and in my 15 years of teaching, only one principal recognized my talents. In addition to that, I had roots back to my grandmother, who was born in 1900 and came from the United States to the north, above the 49th parallel to Canada. And I'm in my 60s, later 60s today, but think at a much younger age. And it's
you sound much younger.
I do look a lot younger, and I am a lot younger.
I'm in my late 60s myself, but you sound much younger.
Thank you. Anyway, I hit my head against the wall, the brick wall. I had I was brought up in faith, and not definitely a religious faith of going to church all the time, but I was religious, as Krishnamurti would say, because I think we're moving to, at least in Canada, it's been secularism for a very long time.
Mm-hmm.
And that we have to bow down and, kiss the red carpet to royalty or to Hollywood or to idols or to whatever, and never get to go deep within our own selves to know who we are. And then we forget it so easily. And I as a teacher, I struggled with the system. Mm-hmm. Because I didn't want to indoctrinate the children. I was lived in the country.
Excuse me for a minute. You didn't want to indoctrinate the children in what?
In an ideology that was restricted. I wanted them to draw out their own knowing and what they wanted, as opposed to me dictating my agenda or the government's agenda.
Mm-hmm.
And so I didn't realize at that time it would be the government's agenda. I thought that agenda was truthful at that time, Mm-hmm. But today I'm seeing that everything is inverted. And the other day I went to I was in a little town where I live, just a little south of here, and I could see a 20-year-old, and he came he attended the same high school as my son did, but at that time I wasn't aware or wise enough to see what the system was doing to my son. And I just saw so many parallels now that it just saddens me deeply that the system is so, and I'm going to use the word because it really affects every family, and it's affected my family. And they know scientifically, technologically, and psychologically and spiritually that they affect the mind of all children, and they keep them into a robotic or very unconscious state as opposed to their super consciousness that they could get in the right environment.
If you were to pick one, if you were to cite one major aspect of the environment that's presently in our schools that you think is toxic to the character development of children, what would you say it is?
Compartmentalization.
Yeah, and tell me what you mean by that.
Well, each subject is in a very narrow framework, and one never, if you do not have integration of understanding art and language and of it, and then you think that what you're learning is the truth. But when you add lots of aspects to it, you see a broader understanding, and I think the synapses of the mind fires, and your soul also feels better because there seems to be there is more truth to it.
All right. So could I perhaps put a different slant on what you're saying here and see if that resonates with you? Are you saying therefore that it's not so much the individual subjects and fields of study that matter, but it's the integration of all of those knowledge, fields of knowledge for some greater purpose, namely the betterment of humankind. And it's that sense of integrated purpose and that sense of that bigger picture that is lacking and therefore affects the character development of our youngsters so much.
Well, I must say I couldn't have said it like you did, but it totally resonates within me.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly what when I listen to you more, I'll be able to articulate it in a more.
Here is the problem that I see. You know, it is so nice theoretically, it is so nice to say that we don't want to indoctrinate anyone, and we want them to think for themselves as they grow and develop. The problem is that if we don't promote any values at all, then young folks remain kind of lost. They'll figure it out eventually, but I know people, you mentioned that you're in your 60s. I'm in my late 60s. I'm about to turn 70 here, not too far from now. But I know folks in their late 60s and 70s, sometimes even in their early 80s, that are just finally getting a clue about how it all works. So there's a danger if we don't at least try to promote some values early on, don't you think?
If it wasn't for my values and my faith and my courage and my wanting to the golden rule, I would not have been able to survive as long as I have.
Well, you know, we have to have some guiding principles. And one of the things that I found in this morally relativistic age and in this permissive time of ours is that people just kind of stumble and bumble through life, not really looking at that bigger picture. We have a when I do my workshops and I train clinicians, I talk about the fact that we have a lot of basically hedonistically oriented individuals who are out for their personal pleasure and gain and profit, and who don't see that bigger picture. Now, not all. Certainly, there are always those individuals who seem to get it, that we're all in this together, and that we all have to play a part, and that if we don't get it together, and if we don't come together, and if we don't do our best to make it all work, then we're going to suffer tremendous consequences. There are always those folks that get that, but more and more folks are just pretty much being almost sedated in a drug-like fashion with all of the stuff that we have out there to titillate them, from some of the mindless music that they hear to some of the mindless programming and messaging that they get on TV or in the movie, some of the stuff coming out of Hollywood. It's not all bad, not by any means. There's some really good stuff. There's no doubt about that. But when you fill a mind full of mush, it's just not going to develop in a mature way, and you're just not going to get the character that you need in folks to function responsibly and to hold relationships together until much later in life, when life has taught them a few fairly hard lessons. But in the meantime, unfortunately, a lot of people get hurt and a lot of things go wrong. And there are a lot of innocent casualties, especially if those young folks without the proper guidance and direction and moral compass marry, or maybe don't even marry and have children, and those children don't have the benefit of a proper structure and character development regimen.
I know that when I look at my marriage, and the first number of years, no problem. I mean, 7, 8, 10, 12, 15 years, no problem. But then once I started teaching, and I had it was very different. My husband was in the corporate world, and I noticed that the corporate world, the children can't make around it. When the corporate world really twists the adults, and I noticed that with my son, because he had 2 degrees, and when he went to work with a bank, he had to sign an agreement that he was not going to say too much to anybody. And I could see that now I find that corporations seem not to have that many values and morals, and yet it bothers me, because I know that when I was 18 years old, there was a large international company, and I said they wanted a mature adult to come and work for them. I applied, and I was 18. I got the job, but it was not a head office; it was a branch office, and I really enjoyed that corporation. But how corporations have changed from the 60s to now. Either you have to do exactly as they tell you and what to do, even if it's immoral or amoral.
Mm-hmm. Well, because the agenda is profit, purely and simple. It's the only agenda, and it's also the growth and development, and therefore the increased profits of the company. That's his interest. There's no bigger picture. There's a lack of a sense that we're part of a great community, not just a human community. You know, this is a vast universe, and everything is connected. Everything is connected in some way. And we're a part of it, and recognizing our part in it and taking some care to do no harm and to attempt to do some good is what it's all about. And one of the things that I have had a problem with in my later adult life is all of the major religions of the world all of the major religious movements, let's put it that way, they started with that kind of big picture in mind. And then they morphed into something else. They morphed into these institutions that seek to basically preserve themselves and to build edifices and whatnot. And they teach certain moral lessons, yes, but the big picture seems to miss everybody. I'll give you a perfect example. I mentioned on the program last week, and I wanted to mention it again this week. In our state here in Arkansas, I'm based in Little Rock, Arkansas, in the United States.
Where Mr. Clinton came from, right?
That's correct. Yes, we showed him the exit door here, but
right.
But he went on to bigger.
And then in Canada, we accepted the blood or whatever, a different some issues in regard to what they were doing experiments with. I think in the jail institutions in Arkansas.
Yes, yeah. But to make a long story short, we have a situation here now where we have 8 inmates on death row who are awaiting execution, and we have this cocktail of drugs that we use to execute people here. And one of the drugs is about to come to its expiration date for potency. And so, emergency of emergencies, the governor now says, we can't let these drugs go to waste. They're going to expire. They won't be as potent as we need them to be. So in 10 days, we're going to execute 8 people. And deprive them of due process of adequate time for appeals and whatnot. There's pressure on the courts, all in the name of getting it done before the drugs expire. And I'm thinking to myself, we have all these causes about the right to life and the dignity and value of human life, and here we are saying, officially, some arm of our government is saying officially that it's more important to save some money and make sure we don't have to get new drugs with different shelf life. We better hurry up and put some people to death before the drugs expire. I mean, we lament how cheap a life is on the streets in some cities with gangs ruling the streets and ordering hits on people for $5-10. We lament how cheap or how valueless a life is on the streets. And here is the government itself saying, hey, look, we can't afford to let these drugs go to waste. We better hurry up and execute these people. 8 people in 10 days.
Yeah, it's insane. And the same thing where it happened in Syria, several airplanes weren't working right or something, and I guess the United States people spent millions of dollars on planes that fell down. That shouldn't have been in operation, probably.
Yeah.
It's insane. But as far as dignity goes, the only dignity that people have are their own dignity. It's certainly not the government that is helping us have any dignity from the minute, as far as I'm concerned, before we conceive to even towards our death.
Mm. Well,
unless we have it within ourselves.
I want to pick your brain again too as a teacher, because as far as character disturbance goes, teachers, in my experience, I've done a lot of workshops for teachers and teachers associations. I see teachers as on the front lines. They have to deal with the fact that so many children come to the classroom unprepared in many ways to learn what they need to learn because they don't have the foundation that they need to have at home. So I wanted to ask you, pick your brain a little bit, what is the number one thing that you saw with children that unnerved you insofar as their preparedness to learn and face the world and make a meaningful contribution? What's the one thing that you saw that most unnerved you?
Well, I could tell you it is not the parents' fault. It's our institution's fault. In 1980, I was told as a classroom that we would be the last class to teach children how to read. And this is how our institutions have worked, whether it be in psychology, in science, in whatever subject they teach. It is not for the big picture and not in the interest of the student. It is all about economics and profit.
Mm.
So it is not the parents' fault at all. I found parents extremely good, and I had the skills, and I had 10 years of working as in the business world as a secretary and whatever, and then 15 years of teaching. And so what we do is we blame the parents, just like we're taught to blame the parents and not to look at the system.
So you think the problem was mainly systemic?
It's absolutely systemic,
Mm-hmm.
right from the core. It's rot.
And you think that money is the driver of that?
Money or economics or whatever, and they certainly don't want anybody to gain any level of consciousness or super consciousness to be able to see how the world really works.
Mm-hmm.
So it's keeping everybody confined in a box. Like my husband, he died 2 years ago at 68 years young. Didn't have to, but he was an accountant, and he just he didn't understand how come. I mean, he loved me dearly because I was so different. But then when I made a choice of either you've got to do some changing to so that we can have a deeper, more meaningful relationship than with this artificial stuff that I had was clinging to, because I had studied my mind for 6 years, 18 months with an individual therapist. And the very first thing I said to one of my therapists, I said, Donna, I said, don't send if you have young children, don't send. That time I didn't understand the system. I said, don't send them to government schools. And then they said to me, because I could speak the truth and I had a very good intuition. And then somebody said to me, would you like to go into a group? And there I stayed for, a number of years. And then I had the tools and the confidence to go out there and, first of all, observe my environment and also challenge some of the systems, so that I can gain the confidence and to speak my truth.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's great that you took the opportunity to get yourself the counseling that you needed to grow and then to make that contribution. That's one of the things that I advocate so much at my workshops. In these days of character disturbance, many folks throw up their hands and say that basically when it comes to an individual's personality or character that you can't change it. And one of the points that I make to folks that attend my workshops is that very few of us can say that we are the same people today that we were 10, 15, 20, or 30 years ago. People grow, and they do change, and they do learn. Our capacity to learn, that's what distinguishes us as human beings. Other animals can learn too, but our capacity to learn is above all the other creatures on the planet. So I believe deeply in our capacity to grow and change, and all we need is the right venue in which to do that. And it all works together, whether it be through counseling, proper education, proper rearing, proper environment within the culture. It all works together. We are all in this together. Various things shape us, and we need to take a very serious look at all those factors that are shaping us if we really want to do a better job of getting along with one another and making things work. Because right now the world is a powder keg, and it's only going to get worse.
Well, it's through, like you say at the beginning, I can't remember, you said it was through your heart and through character, through somebody who has great wisdom and can walk us through some of our perceptions, walk us through every belief and every word we speak, and who's willing to take the time. And you and of course I was one who wanted to learn, and that our brains are not fixed.
Mm-hmm.
They're never fixed.
How did you stumble on this program or my work?
On your work, I would love to take a number of classes with you, but I'm dealing with courts and a daughter that is narcissistic or psychopathic, and my husband changed the will and all this, so I'm dealing with the courts as well, and trying to be my own lawyer.
Unfortunately, we don't have any workshops scheduled for Canada before I retire. I inquired into that actually, but when I did some workshops up in Washington State, I did have a number of folks from Canada cross over and attend. But I'm unfortunately the company I've contracted with does not plan for workshops outside the United States. And I'm finishing up.
We desperately need them. In Canada, we desperately need them. Oh. We need independent thinkers. Had I not had the connection I had with my grandmother, who was born in the United States in 1900 and came to Canada in 1907, I do not think that I would have had the strong foundation I have had up and from when I was 2 to when I was, 8 years old. And I was fortunate, and God-given, divine gave me the right connections here, so that, and it came from Eastern he or she was from Eastern philosophy rather than Rockefeller's psychological ideology or programming.
Mm-hmm. Well, I thank you for calling in. I appreciate your input. I hope you'll avail yourself of my books and the blog, and you'll keep tuning in. And I hope you'll call in again sometime. It was nice talking with you. And thank you for your years of service. Teachers are some of our more unsung heroes out there. I know that if it weren't for some of the folks who guided me along when I was getting my education, there was no way that I could be either the person I am today or doing the work that I've been doing. So,
I've had that experience too. Even at university, one of the gentlemen who was teaching gifted children, he said to me, he was 55 when he passed away, and he said to me, "Helen, you're gifted." And I said, "Gifted in what?" And he looked at me and he waited, and he wanted my response, and then my response was just being myself. And he looked at me and he gave me a big smile. So the real thing is get back to our original self and know who we are.
Well, thanks for calling in. I appreciate it, and God bless you. And I hope we'll talk again sometime.
Great, thank you.
All right, take care. Bye-bye. An interesting call there, and a very important point. Before we really can get out there and make a difference in the world, it really does matter that we know ourselves. It really does matter that we know ourselves, and that we know ourselves well, that we know our strengths and our weaknesses, that we truly come to love ourselves in the appropriate way so that we can love others in the way that's necessary. As I was saying before, and as the caller reiterated, we're not going to change the world by force, and we're not going to change the world by economic clout. We're not going to change the world by constant threats or braggadocio. We're not going to use power and coercion to change the world. That's not how we're going to do it. We're going to change the world by knowing ourselves and knowing each other well enough and caring enough to change hearts and minds, to open hearts and minds to all the great possibilities. Character matters. It matters more than anything else. Who we are matters. Not just what we do, but who we are. How we want to see ourselves and how we want to be seen by others. And not just in a false sense. Not putting on a facade. But how we really want to be regarded. That matters. And that's what I write about and speak about. I can't tell you the number of times. I have spent most of my career dealing with either the aggrieved relationship partners of seriously disturbed characters or the seriously disturbed characters themselves. Some of the folks that I've worked with, have done seriously bad things and have spent time in prison. And I can tell you with absolute certainty that not one individual that I have seen turn their lives around did so out of a sense of guilt about what they had done, but rather, more often, they turn their lives around when they no longer like the person that they have been, and they want to be a different person. They want to be a better person. They want to hold an entirely different image of themselves. That really matters. It matters more than anything. And how we will change this world is one heart and mind at a time, and it starts with us. When we get it, when we get that we are all in this world together and that we are all interconnected, whether we like it or not, we are all interconnected. All that matters is that we relate to one another in a loving, healthy way. That's all that matters. That's all that matters. You know, from a spiritual perspective, many faiths say the same thing. That we're all being prepared in this life. We're all being prepared for the ultimate relationship. This is our grooming period. This is where we learn how to relate. In the training workshops I give to professionals, I tell them that the thing that makes the difference between traditional insight-oriented therapies and what I call character constructive therapy is that the engagement of the therapist and the client is in fact training in relating, because the character impaired individual comes to the enterprise lacking the skills to relate in a healthy, loving way, in a way that fosters depth and intimacy in a relationship. So basically, they have to learn. They have to learn how to relate in a healthier way. So the therapy becomes training in relating. It's an entirely different enterprise than trying to get somebody to see something differently. And so most of the world's major faith systems, belief systems, see this existence of ours as just that also, training in relating. Because we're being prepared for something here. There's a vast, vast universe out there. It's so awe-inspiring. You just have to look at some of the photos that the Hubble Space Telescope has taken to realize this vast expanse and how unbelievably awesome it is, and how incomprehensible its workings are. And we're such a small, small part of it. And we are so fortunate to have this existence on this tiny blue dot in the midst of this vast expanse. This tiny blue dot that right now is under siege in so many ways because we use it and abuse it and exploit it, pollute it, don't take care of it, and we don't take care of each other. We are the recipients, we're the beneficiaries of a miracle, of an absolute miracle beyond comprehension. And there's even research now to support the notion that our grandparents had it absolutely right. It all starts with counting these blessings that we have. It all starts with gratitude for our mere existence in this marvelous, incomprehensible, vast creation. As soon as we feel grateful, a sense of indebtedness arises in us, and then a sense of responsibility to do our part in making this all work, in doing no harm, and doing our best to do some good. That's what makes it all worthwhile. That's what makes it all worthwhile. So I'm going to be speaking more about this tragedy that's about to befall us here in Arkansas. I spoke about it for a while there while I was on the phone with the caller. But the date is fast approaching when our state plans to execute 8 people in the span of 10 days and make history, all to save some money on some drugs due to lose their potency. It's just unfathomable that we would regard life so cheaply. There's so many areas where we regard things so cheaply. We're such hedonistically oriented individuals, always looking for what will please us, but not looking at that bigger picture about what will sustain us in the long run. What will sustain us is if we make of ourselves the kind of individual that cares enough and knows how well enough to love our fellow men and women, to advance this life, preserve all of the sources of this life, and make way for future generations to enjoy this life. That's what will make a difference, and it all starts with us. It all starts with us in our hearts and in our minds. It all starts with character. That's why I call this program Character Matters, because it does. And I ask you again to tune in next week for another edition. Thanks for joining me tonight. I'm Dr. George Simon. Take a gander over to the blog, read the articles at manipulative-people.com, and I'll see you next week. Take care.